Imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see all these photos of this young woman, exploring LA.
Yeah.
She's stylish. She's enjoying herself. She's full of life. That's Elisa Lam, a Canadian student visiting LA in 2013.
Right.
She was posting about her trip, sharing her experiences, and she seemed really happy.
What's so fascinating about this is that contrast, between these joyful posts and the chilling turn that Elisa's story takes. It's almost like one of those horror movies where everything starts out idyllic and sunny.
Right.
But you just know that something terrible is lurking just around the corner.
It is, and the setting itself even adds to that sense of unease.
Yeah.
Elisa was staying at the Cecil Hotel, a place with a pretty dark history.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like the hotel itself is another character in this story, casting a shadow over everything that unfolds.
The Cecil has been linked to so many incidents over the years.
Right.
Deaths, disappearances, you name it. It had this reputation for being a magnet for the strange and macabre.
Yeah.
So even before Elisa's disappearance, the location itself just adds this layer of creepiness to the whole story.
Okay, so let's unpack what we know about Elisa before she vanished. We know she was a student at the University of British Columbia. She was into fashion and travel, just like her blog post showed. But she was also open about her struggles with bipolar disorder and depression.
And that's what makes her blog Ether Fields so valuable in understanding her state of mind.
Yeah.
She wasn't just posting, travel photos and fashion tips. She was writing about her mental health journey in a very raw and honest way.
Right.
In fact, she even quoted Chuck Palahniuk,
Oh, wow.
the author of Fight Club, saying, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." It's a pretty heavy quote, and looking back, it feels almost prophetic.
It really does. It's like she was grappling with these anxieties, these fears of living a life unfulfilled. And that quote, against the backdrop of her disappearance, it just takes on this whole other level of meaning.
Absolutely. It raises the question of whether those feelings of being haunted actually played a role in her actions leading up to her disappearance.
Right.
Was she feeling lost, overwhelmed, or maybe even experiencing a shift in her mental state?
So she arrives in LA. She checks into the Cecil, and she starts exploring the city. Everything seems fine at first. Then on January 31st, the day she's supposed to check out and head to Santa Cruz, she vanishes. Poof, gone.
Her daily calls to her parents stop.
Wow.
No one hears from her. The police are called, they start searching, but there's no trace.
And that's when things start to get really strange.
Yeah.
Because this is where that infamous elevator footage comes into play.
Right.
I have to say, even hearing you describe it sends chills down my spine.
It is unsettling footage, there's no doubt about it. The timestamp is obscured, the video quality is grainy, and Elisa's behavior is, erratic. She's alone in the elevator, pressing all the buttons, hiding in the corner, peering out into the hallway as if someone is there. But there's no one on camera.
It's like she's playing this twisted game of hide and seek with an invisible presence.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that the elevator doors won't close. She steps out into the hallway, gestures wildly as if she's communicating with someone we can't see, and then finally the door shut and she's gone. Vanished from the camera's eye.
And that footage, as you can imagine, quickly went viral. People were dissecting it frame by frame, trying to understand what they were seeing.
Of course, it sparked all these theories online.
Yeah.
Was this a psychotic episode related to her bipolar disorder?
Right.
Was she trying to escape from someone? Was the footage somehow manipulated?
It's like a digital puzzle box full of clues and inconsistencies, but no clear solution.
And it's important to approach these theories with a critical eye. We can't just jump to conclusions based on grainy footage and speculation.
Of course.
We need to look at the evidence, the context, and Elisa's own history to try and piece together what might have happened.
So let's dive into those theories a bit deeper, shall we? Because if that elevator footage was unsettling, what happened next was truly horrifying.
So let's start with that theory that Elisa was experiencing a psychotic episode. We know she was struggling with bipolar disorder, and while not everyone with bipolar disorder experiences psychosis, it is a possible symptom.
So for our listeners who might not be familiar with this, what exactly does a psychotic episode entail?
Well, it's a mental state where someone loses touch with reality. They might have hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, difficulty thinking clearly.
And how might that have manifested in Elisa's case? Could her behavior in the elevator be explained by psychosis?
It's possible. If she was having a psychotic break, she might have felt threatened or confused, which could explain those actions we see in the footage. But it's important to remember that we can't really diagnose anyone after they've passed, and even if she was experiencing psychosis, it doesn't explain how she ended up where she did.
Right, because weeks go by after that footage surfaces and still no sign of Elisa. Then guests at the Cecil start complaining about some really strange issues with their water.
Low-pressure discolored water. A strange taste. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Totally. It's like the building itself was trying to tell them something was wrong.
And those complaints led to a pretty gruesome discovery. A maintenance worker went to check the rooftop water tanks, and, well, he found Elisa's body.
That's right, inside one of the water tanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where it gets really complex, because those tanks were not easy to access.
No, not at all. They were large, heavy, with lids that were difficult to open and close. There was no fixed way to get inside, and workers would typically use a ladder.
So how did Elisa get up there? And more importantly, how did she get inside one of those tanks? Was she physically capable of doing that on her own, especially if she was having a mental health crisis?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it fueled even more speculation. Some people believe she couldn't have gotten up there and into that tank without help, suggesting that foul play might have been involved.
Which brings us to another theory. Was someone else involved in Elisa's disappearance?
It's a possibility that we can't ignore. The rooftop access was restricted, and the logistics of getting into the tank are really challenging. Could someone have forced her up there? Or maybe lured her there somehow?
And then there's the autopsy report. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, but even that didn't provide all the answers.
No. The autopsy also listed bipolar disorder as a contributing factor, which again leads us back to the possibility of a psychotic episode. However, even with those conclusions, there were still so many unanswered questions. The report didn't explain how she got onto the roof or into the tank, and there were certain details, like the lack of significant water in her lungs that just didn't quite add up for some people.
It's like every piece of information just leads to more questions, creating this intricate web of possibilities, but no clear path to the truth.
Exactly. And then you have the internet, which just explodes with theories.
Oh yeah, this case went viral, and online sleuths were dissecting every detail, every frame of the elevator footage, every blog post Elisa had ever written.
It became this massive online phenomenon with everyone trying to crack the code of what happened to Elisa Lam. Some people even pointed to similarities between her case and the horror film Dark Water, which also features a body found in a hotel water tank.
Which honestly is just creepy beyond belief.
Yeah.
It's almost too much of a coincidence.
Right. It's easy to see how people's imaginations just run wild with this case.
So where do we land on all of this? We've got this official ruling of accidental drowning, but so much remains unexplained.
That's the thing about this case. Despite the investigations, the autopsy, the official ruling, there's still this lingering sense of mystery. And I think that's what continues to captivate people.
We need to remember that Elisa Lam was a real person, a young woman with hopes and dreams and struggles. She was more than just a viral video or a true crime case.
Absolutely. It's so important to humanize her, to remember that behind this mystery, there was a life cut tragically short.
Her blog posts reveal a thoughtful, introspective person grappling with the complexities of life.
She wrote about her love for travel, her passion for fashion, and yes, her battles with mental health. There's a vulnerability in her writing that makes this whole thing even more heartbreaking.
It's a reminder that even in the age of social media, where we often present curated versions of ourselves, there's often a deeper, more complex story beneath the surface.
And in Elisa's case, that story ended far too soon, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions.
Questions that even after all this time continue to haunt us.
What stands out to you as the most perplexing aspect of this whole case?
For me, it's the location of her body. How did she end up in that water tank? Was it a tragic accident fueled by a mental health crisis? Was it something more sinister? We may never know for sure. Yeah, it's like we're looking at this puzzle, but some of the pieces are just missing.
Right.
We have these fragments of information, all these tantalizing clues, but the full picture, it just remains out of reach.
And that's what makes Elisa Lam's case so fascinating and so frustrating.
Yeah.
It just defies easy answers. It really challenges us to confront the limits of our understanding.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that film Dark Water earlier, and it makes me think about how we as humans are just drawn to these kinds of stories, these mysteries, you know, where the truth is hidden in darkness.
It's like our brains are wired to look for patterns,
Right.
to find explanations, even if those explanations, you know, venture into the supernatural or the conspiratorial.
We want to believe there's a reason, a logic, even behind the most inexplicable events.
Exactly. And when those reasons are absent, when the logic fails us, it creates this sense of unease, you know, this feeling that something is just not right, that there's more to the story than we can actually grasp.
It's like this primal fear.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown, the things that go bump in the night.
And those fears are often amplified when the mystery involves someone like Elisa.
Right.
A young woman traveling alone, vulnerable, far from home. It taps into those anxieties about safety, about the fragility of life, about the darkness that can be lurking beneath the surface of even the most ordinary places.
So what does this all mean for us, the ones captivated by Elisa Lam's story? What can we take away from this deep dive into her case?
I think it's a reminder that the world is full of mysteries, of unanswered questions, stories that might never have a neat ending.
Yeah, it challenges us to be critical thinkers, to question everything, to look at things from different perspectives, and to accept that sometimes the truth is just out of reach.
And I think it also reminds us to approach these cases with empathy and respect. Elisa was more than just a viral video, more than just a mystery to be solved. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a complex human being with her own hopes and dreams and struggles.
We need to remember her humanity even as we're grappling with the unsettling circumstances of her death.
If there's one thing I hope listeners take away from this deep dive, it's this Elisa Lam story is a tragedy, a cautionary tale, and a reminder that sometimes even with all the information we have, the truth remains just out of reach. It's a case that makes us think about the limits of what we can know and to accept the unsettling reality that some stories might never have a definite answer.
Well said. If you're intrigued by this case, I encourage you to do your own research, explore all the different theories, and come to your own conclusions. The mystery of Elisa Lam is one that continues to intrigue and unsettle. It's a story that sticks with you long after the details have faded.